In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to start and launch your STL membership in 2025, more specifically showing you exactly how to get your first batch of initial members paying you monthly for your STL files or memberships. If you don't know who I am, my name is Brandon. I'm a full-time designer and creator at Make It 3D. I've been creating 3D printable designs for the past 5 years. I have products that have done tens of thousands of dollars in sales and digital downloads, from memberships that have literally started from 0 members all the way up to 10, 20 to even 100 members paying me monthly for my designs and resources. And what I want to do in this video is break down exactly how you can implement the strategies and lessons that I've learned over the past 5 years of selling STL files and digital assets, and how you can implement this into your own business. More specifically, if you're an artist, creator, or seller who wants to start monetizing your STL files. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is bring up this Notion document. What I wanna do is break every single category down into its individual detail. That way you can kind of break down everything you need to know when it comes to selling memberships. Just to be clear, this assumes that you already have files ready to be sold. You're already an artist or creator that knows how to model, and you're someone that actually likes to do 3D printing and actually loves the hobby. If you don't like the hobby, if you don't like to design, and or you don't want to build a community, truthfully, this business model is not for you. But if you love all that stuff and more, then truthfully, this is a perfect business model to get started. So with all that said, let's jump right into it. So the first thing we're going to cover here is picking a platform. So when it comes to picking a platform, truthfully, there are many. There's Patreon, there's School, there's Gumroad, there's Kajabi, there's Ko-Fi. There's so many platforms where you can list your files for sale online. And all of these platforms basically do the exact same thing. The key importance that you need to know when it comes to picking a platform is whether or not that platform best suits you in your community, and as well as the fees associated with it. And that's typically overlooked, especially when it comes to digital assets and building communities, because a lot of times these platforms might lure you in with a free sort of membership model, meaning that there's no cost up front. But as you start growing your membership and getting members, over time, the fees that accumulate from the processing fees, more specifically, that actually adds up, especially if you're doing tens of thousands of dollars in sales per month and you're getting consistent members. That's just fees you're basically just giving over to the platform solely because you're just using their brand or name. And I want to cover a few here, ones that I've used in the past and ones that I think you'll also benefit from. So the first platform I want to cover is Patreon. In my opinion, this is one of the most popular platforms, especially for 3D artists and designers who want to start monetizing their files and creations to the 3D printing community. And especially since Patreon is kind of ingrained around 3D printing, like you typically would look for a creator on Patreon versus anywhere else. But the key thing about Patreon is that they lure you in with the free model, meaning that you don't have to pay anything per month. They don't charge you to use their platform, but they do bill you based off of the percentage that you choose. So they actually have different tiers and ranges. I think the starting point is like around 8%, and it goes as high up to like 15%, depending on where you're at in your business. But if you can imagine, if you sign up with Patreon and you decide to host your community there and you want to sell files or designs or start a membership there, and if your monthly membership is around $10, well, you need to be okay with giving away 8% in addition to all the other fees that they have with that platform. In addition, I believe that Apple also set up Patreon where if someone signs up through iPhone, they take like 30% of the cut. So I think they actually take like more from your cut, if that makes sense. I no longer use Patreon just for the reasons that I don't want to be taken away from processing fees. Truthfully, processing fees are one of those things you can't avoid. But when you are making a certain amount of money per month and you have a certain number of members, let's just say if you're making 10 grand a month, and if you have, somebody paying you 10 grand a month, you have a collection of people paying you this much, well, 8% of 10 grand, that's kind of a lot of cash, right? Versus in another platform where they might charge you 3%. Well, you're kind of saving money and not giving it away to another platform, and just keeping the profits for yourself. So the second community that I would recommend is school.com. This is one that I use myself. I only use this mainly because I trust the founder and I like what he does and I've been in his programs. But otherwise, I would not recommend this for a complete beginner. Some people have asked me like why school or why use school. The reason for this is because I think it's simple, it's seamless as a community aspect, and it keeps everything bare bones, which is kind of important. More specifically when it comes to building a business, because it can get really overwhelming with all the tools and resources that are out there online. But my point here with this school, I can actually connect Stripe, which is a payment processor, and that processor charges like 2.9% on each transaction plus 30 cents. So if someone, let's just say if I make $100, I'm left with like 96.70, somewhere around there. So honestly, I actually save money. Like I actually keep more of the profit. The only downside is since I'm using school, I have to pay $99 a month. Which is kind of a hard pill to swallow, especially if you're first getting started and you don't have any money. But once you actually start getting those members, that $99 is like it's kind of like whatever, you're making this much amount of money for this tiny percentage in addition to all the processing fees that you save out on, if that makes sense. The last one I want to cover here is Gumroad. So Gumroad has an option where they charge it flat 10%. So this is probably one of the highest ones that I've seen. 10% out of $10, that's a dollar. And truthfully, if you're processing $100 in payments, they take away like $10. So it's kind of a lot of money. But just to be clear, it really depends on the ecosystem that you'd want to pick. So if you're used to using Patreon, then use Patreon. If you're used to using Gumroad, then use Gumroad. If you're used to using Ko-Fi, then use Ko-Fi. And or if you want to use any other platforms like MakerWorld, Printables, as I believe those platforms have those commercial licensing features. Albeit the only thing is that if you are on those platforms, that means you have no control because now someone's able to price match or look for an alternative design. For example, it's like Etsy, or Amazon, where if you find a product, it's very likely it's going to recommend you other products similar to that, and someone can price match. When I don't want people to price match my products or designs to someone else, I want to keep the ecosystem all intact, if that makes sense. So I want to get someone into my ecosystem rather than pushing someone else to another person's ecosystem. That's just my opinion. But if you're an artist or creator who's just getting started, don't worry about that. Just pick one that best suits you and just be okay with it. The second thing I want to cover is packaging your STL files. So, when it comes to packaging your STL files, what do I mean by this? What I mean is that if you want to sell STL files or a membership to your files, you want to deliver a great experience for your customers. You want to make it as seamless as possible for them to download the assets, open it up on their computer, and get to printing right away. This means that the file should be ready to go. It should have already been tested, and it should already have any colors preset on the model if there's any colors that you use during that process. In addition, which I think is optional, if you also want to include the filaments that you use, so that way someone can replicate the exact print as you got it within your product photos. And the reason why this is important is because for me, I really care about delivering a seamless experience to my customers. A lot of my customers are sellers. So, when they open up a file, they don't really have time to, go around and tinker and change the scales and settings and the colors unless they really want to. But I want someone to open up the file, even if they're complete beginner, just click print and have a pretty much flawless experience. So when I give the file and they download it, they're presented with three things. The first is the raw STL file, meaning they get access to the STL file. The second one is a 3MF file already included with my settings and colors. And lastly, a PDF document redirecting them to my site and or a place where they can subscribe if they haven't subscribed already. And I'll go into that in just a bit. But my point here is that when you package a file, you ideally want to have it in a zip folder. That zip folder has all of the documents and assets inside. Think of it when you buy like a phone or any sort of product at the store. When you unbox the phone or the product, you don't just get the product. You usually get like a manual and as well as a warranty and some additional info. Like that's what you really want. You want to give the customer the experience, although in a digital way, so they can open up the file and get access and start printing. That's my point with packaging files. Although it sounds simple, but truthfully, I don't see a lot of sellers doing this. And I think they're missing out on some key revenue and additional sales just by not doing this. The next thing I want to cover is one-time purchases. So as a seller, you have a couple of options. You can either do memberships or one-time purchases. And I got to be honest, I've done both and I've gotten a lot of flack for doing only memberships. Like there's people that have said some really mean things or say really weird things just because you only offer memberships instead of one-time purchases. And then there's people that just want the one-time purchases and they don't want the membership, which is totally fine. I totally get that. But for me, I personally only stick to memberships. And now moving forward, if I were to offer one-time files, it would have to be a file where I charge a little bit more than usual, only because the amount of time it takes to upload. And there's a couple of places where you can upload your designs. You have Cult3D, you have Printables, you have MakerWorld, you have Creality Cloud. All of these platforms are great for one-time purchases. And yes, I know some of them have memberships, but my point here is that if you're designing and you're just starting out, Initially, you're going to want to just pick one platform. But as your catalog grows or expands, and or if you start growing, like you're making more money, then you can start expanding your reach of where your files go. Because, for example, there's days where I just wake up and I see, $120 in Creality Cloud. And then, I log into my printables account 3 months later and there's money in there. Or I log into my cult account and maybe like every other week or so and there's money there, or whatever other platform. You get what I'm saying here? So for example, I'm just diversifying where my assets are and just placing it in these pockets where people are already looking for stuff, and people will buy it if they like the file. And instead of just one platform where I'm just limited based off of whoever visits that site, I'm expanding my reach and getting more and more people to check out my files. And then what turns out to be, one stream of income now turns into like three, four, or five, especially if you're willing to put in the work. The only downside to this is that you have to upload the files individually to each site, and each site has their own prerequisites. And also, it can take some time to do this, especially if you have like a ton of assets. So, if you're at a point where you're actually consistently making a certain amount of money, then you may actually want to consider hiring like a VA or someone overseas, or just hiring someone to do that for you, and or get your wife or partner or your spouse to help you with this, because this is the part of the process that actually takes the most time, which is actually uploading the files, adding the images, adding the titles, adding the descriptions, adding any sort of details, keywords, tags. All that stuff takes like the longest time. But once you do it, it's like a one-time thing. And then, that file sits on the site for like the rest of time unless you take it down. The next thing I want to cover here is licensing. Now, I want to be very clear when it comes to licensing, there's two types of models. You either have a commercial license or a personal license. Now, in my opinion, it depends on what you want to do. Most people opt for a commercial license where they give a commercial access to people subscribe to their memberships, because if you're making money from your designs, someone subscribes to your products, and they make money from what you make, well, they're only going to spend more money with you or continue to stay on board because they're actually seeing an ROI, which is like a no-brainer, right? So if you're making money, the person you're selling to making money, and they're also to make able to make money themselves and reinvest back into their business, there's no reason for them to cancel on you. So what I've done here is I've created a free licensing agreement that you guys can use. It's 100% free. Enjoy. For most of you who are just getting started, this could be really, really useful for you, for helping you figure out exactly what is important to you. Just keep in mind, this is something I use within the Prince to Product program for my members. And I'm just giving it to you guys because I know a lot of you guys will benefit from something like this. Feel free to click down here below, click on the document, click on file, then click on make as copy. Please don't request it, just click on make as copy. That way you can have your own document within your Google Docs. Now, you might be asking, why even mention this? Why even add a document? And do I need to get members to sign this? No, you do not need to get members to sign this. What I recommend you doing is just filling out this information and having this document clearly laid out somewhere where someone can access this. So basically, my point with this document is just to kind of legalize or formalize everything that you have to offer within the agreement. So just like when you click on a website and you sign up for that website, they're typically going to have you mark off the terms and conditions that that website is going to ask you to check off. And by doing that, that just allows you to enforce it a little bit better, and people kind of walk into it knowing what they're going to get, if that makes sense. Now, keep in mind, yes, I know there are people in other countries that will take their designs, and you really cannot enforce a binding contract in the US and like Germany. Like, and let's be honest, that's like impossible. But at least you formalize these things, and that way you're very clear as to what someone's going to get. And when they do get it, they're on the same page as you. And just speaking from experience, you want your clients or your customers to, you want to set clear boundaries with them, but you also want to make sure they're getting something in return for paying for your products. Like I mentioned, this is free to use. Go ahead and download it, make a copy. Feel free to list this anywhere on your site or anywhere where you host files. You don't have to have someone sign this. I'm just saying that this should be something that you should probably use or consider, especially once you start making a certain amount of money. And one last thing I want to cover here is licensing, more specifically what to price your products when you're first getting started. So whether you should offer a personal license versus a commercial one. In my opinion, I would say just start with a commercial license. Just remove the personal aspect part of it. Now, if you truly want to include that, that's fine. You can charge, let's just say $3 if you're just starting out. But if you're an established seller, you can start anywhere from like $5 to $10. And let's just say if you have a collection of, let's just say 10 designs, Well, you can charge a commercial license for $5 for the first 20 members. And then after 20 members, it goes up to $10. That way you have like that incentive for someone to sign up before the price increases. Additionally, with your personal and commercial memberships, you don't want to really separate the groups, like meaning like these are people that are in the community for one specific purpose, like they want to download assets or files, but you don't want to separate them, so keep them together. But also at the same time, make sure to build a community in the process. So just because someone signs up, that doesn't mean you're hands off. That means you actually have to engage with them, make sure that they're actually paying you that amount of money per month consistently. When people are in hard times, they're looking to for ways to cut expenses. And if your membership isn't worth it, or you as a leader isn't contributing to the group or helping other people or finding ways to make better products, people are going to cancel, and just the nature of it. It's called churn. That's just the nature of it. Obviously, this is at like a much higher level, but right now, just focus on offering either a $5 commercial membership or a $10 one, depending on where you're at, because I know a lot of you are going to be in a different situation since I can't predict that. But that's just my advice. The last thing I want to cover is marketing your products. Now, this is crucial because you can have the best files in the world. You can have your tiers lined up, perfect, ready to go with all your images, covers, thumbnails. You can have, uh, picture perfect prints with the best quality, that is so unique with, all the fancy colors and edits. But if you're not marketing your designs, if you're not creating content and actually pushing people from that content to go and sign up for your memberships and buy your files, well, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot, because don't rely on Creality Cloud, Cold 3D, printables, or things, or any of these platforms to market your products for you. These platforms have their own reason to market only popular designers and what's trending. Totally okay. But at the same time, although we're leveraging these other platforms, we also want to bring in our own source of traffic and our own people, or build our own communities that allow us to bring people to come and buy our products, which is why you want to market your products. This is where you either create content on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, YouTube. Doesn't matter where you create it, but you want to start marketing yourself and putting yourself out there. For example, for me here on this page, when I first got started, I was actually marketing a lot of like generic products, very simple stuff. And these simple products, they got 500,000 views, 100,000 views, 20,000 views, 100K, 92, 14, a 500,000. So, these views here, I turn those viewers into customers simply by showcasing the product and then using a niche, more specifically like Amazon home finds, but I switched it to 3D printable home finds or something like that. And then I took all that traffic, all the people who watch these videos, and I left the call to action at the very end of it, like, hey, if you want to find this file, you can find it with link in my bio. So then people are like naturally going to go to my bio and then see where they can buy the file. So that's my point here. So if you want to redirect and create traffic, and take all the traffic on these platforms and redirect them, so that way they can sign up for your memberships, your files, or whatever it is you have to offer. So with all that said, we pretty much cover everything you need to know when it comes to launching your STL membership. We covered everything from licensing to selling one-time purchase files, to picking a platform, to marketing, and as well as how do you get people to convert into paying customers. And truthfully, once you've actually mastered this, more specifically, when you know how to get customers, when you know how to market your products, when you know how to create a great customer experience where your customers get a license to your files and being able to make money from it, truthfully, it's a great ecosystem to be part of, because as a designer, you only want to see your creations being 3D printed and then people actually benefiting from your work and designs. And truthfully, it's one of those things as a designer that it's really cool to see someone just making money from your products and telling you all about it. And honestly, that's a great way to distribute your artwork virtually anywhere without you having to do the work yourself. So with all that said, that pretty much wraps up today's video. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe down below. Additionally, if you want to learn exactly how to start and grow your 3D printing business, maybe you want to launch that STL membership, and or if you need guidance from me personally, I've opened up slots to the Print to Product program, in addition to a free training on how to get started with this specific business model. If you're interested, there's going to be a link down below. Answer a few quick questions, and from there, we'd be able to see whether me and my team will be able to help you reach whatever goals you have for 3D printing. But with that said, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.